So I did a video recently about speed prepping Icewind Dale, which is a big, thick module that I don't intend to run. And I have dragged Ryan here
Mhm.
in to talk about it. Hello, Ryan.
Hello. Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. So we got talking on Facebook, and you briefly mentioned that this was the first adventure you ran, right? First big module.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's a big module indeed.
So it was a big chunk. What made you go for such a module?
Actually, my brother-in-law, who I had been playing with for the previous almost year, gifted this to me for my birthday because I'm a big fan of this. This is sort of what it's based off of.
Oh,
This Crystal Shard and the Icewind Dale trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. And I'm a big fan of the Forgotten Realms books, especially those three. And so he's like, hey, you want to DM this? I'm like, yeah. And I agreed to it before I actually read it. So,
all
oops.
right. Yeah. And so, yeah, you get it, you read it. You were happy with it? You thought, well, looks good. Fun.
Honestly, it's broken. I think it's broken into three chapters, and no, maybe it's four chapters. And the first chapter is all about the 10 towns that are in Icewind Dale. It's just a big, vast empty tundra, snow covered. It's like the northmost point in the realms. And that first chapter, when they're talking about those each town, it really breaks it down, and I fell in love with it right there. And I really enjoyed where it was going, but sort of near the end, it's like the story split off into a completely different story, and it was kind of confusing for me. And I was like, well, if I'm confused, I think my players are going to be confused. I should at least know what I'm doing. So, we made some adjustments. And when I run these games, I kind of started off almost like railroading them a little bit, and then I was like, I'm gonna just ease up. Let's have some fun. Or no one's winning here, right? We just want to tell a good story, and so we kind of dove into the characters that they're playing, and some of the characters that they introduce in the first chapter of this book, in the towns, and from there we sort of just organically wrote our own version. And I use this as kind of a guide, but I wasn't so strict to adhere to everything. But there's a lot of really good stuff in there. There's some stuff we didn't use
Yeah.
at all. It's pretty big. I was surprised they put so much in it, because Icewind Dale, is, if you read those books, it's not a lot going on there. It's just monsters and ice. So they put a pretty good story in there. But when it split at the end, I was like, oh, what do we do? I don't know if we ended up making it more simple or more complicated by the time, but regardless, I let the players sort of drive the story, and they fell in love with the characters they created and the story. And, I think we ended it pretty well. And I'm excited to maybe come back to it. Some of those NPCs that they met, their stories kind of went on, and we might return it for a one shot or something.
Yeah, we should probably, for people who don't know what it is, and I'm going to put my spoilers logo up. So,
Oh,
Icewind Dale, right? It seems to me, and I've not run it, I should say why. I'll say first why I didn't plan on running it. I buy the big box sets of all those miniatures where you get the whole brick,
right.
and I was excited to buy another brick of minis and run this adventure. But every mini that they pulled out was that sort of blue tone snow version. There was just no variety. I was like, oh, so it's completely Arctic, snow, snow, snow. And I'm like, this is just, no. I don't just want loads of snowy creatures. But as I say, I haven't run it. That's why I didn't buy it, run it rather. So, yeah, you're right. 10 towns sounds good. I don't know each individual town. I don't know how different they are. Then Icewind Dale, the adventure goes out to the area, which is well documented, isn't it, in the lore.
Yeah.
There is a Sunblight fortress where a dragon is released, and what does seem cool is it's got a certain route which has tables of what damage the dragon does to the town. So it's a bit of a race. Well, not necessarily, but it can be a race to
Yeah.
stop it. Then Destruction's Light. Well, Is that when the Oh no, there's Grimscarley, some sort of icy skull abode. Then Caves of Hunger. They get the Rime of the Frost Maiden being a poem. It opens a glacier. You go through to a necropolis of Yithrin.
That's right.
And there's the Arcane Brotherhood, and that's kind of it. That's the very thin skeleton of Race.
Yeah, it is.
But I do like it. It starts off with like chasing down this guy. Murders have happened, and you should investigate.
Yeah, murder mystery. It starts off as a murder mystery, which is
Yeah.
a nice
That's good.
hook. And I just want to touch on what you said about how you were kind of turned off by the snow, frozen, frost, and so every time I would describe a scene, they're like, "Wait, let me guess. It's frozen." I'm like, "Yes, of course it's frozen."
Yeah.
So if they ever found an area that wasn't frozen, they were like, "Oh, we must be something magical here."
Yeah, I mean, they go into the necropolis. I imagine it's not frozen in there, but yeah, just walking around, it's like, well, it's snowing again, and you're really cold. Like running out of the abyss when you're doing the Underdark. Well, it's like stone looking, and there's a tunnel for hours. It's like everything's like that. I don't like the limitation, but yeah. What was your experience then? Just
Ooh, I when looking at this, I'm like, yeah, it's just cold all the time. So I live here in Arizona, in the desert, so it's always so hot here. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even now, like you can still wear shorts outside, and it's nice. But when it's summer, it sucks. So it was kind of nice to play this in the hot months.
Yeah.
And pretend that we were somewhere where it wasn't, so ridiculously hot. But we really sort of leaned into the snow and tried to use our imaginations to, this is sort of written as like a horror themed adventure. And so we used the snow and the darkness to play on that. And really, it's very dreary,
All right.
And that was also part of it. Sort of the horror aspect wasn't so much like scary monsters all the time, which there are, but it's more like there's no hope at some points in this, and my players were feeling that, and we really got to see them play through some emotions in our game, which I found fascinating, especially when they, it made us have fun with it and make jokes and keep it lighthearted, even though, it was kind of a dreary setting. But man, I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the frosty aspect of it.
Yeah.
And when I believe where we met on that thread, it was sort of like the opposite to cold, right? With Asmodeus, and we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what are the sort of mechanics? Did you go for... Is it difficult terrain in the snow, or do you say, no, you just travel? Or is there, like, looking for food? Did you play into that or skip over it?
We started to... all the stats are there for that kind of stuff, but it was a bit of a slog to do that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know what? Unless it played into the story that we wanted to tell, it didn't make it an issue. There were some times where I'm like, okay, you haven't eaten for this amount of time, or all there is to eat here is fish because all there is around here is this lake. You're not getting anything nice. It's kind of just fish tacos, all day.
Yeah.
And so we did play into that a little bit.
So the 10 towns, did you do, how many towns did you do of the 10?
I think we didn't visit all of them, which I found, I was like, really? We played it for over 2 years, and we just finished a couple months ago. And I'm like, I can't believe we didn't visit that town or that town, but it was never relevant to the story we wanted to tell. Like we could go there, we could play through the book and go there, but it really, there's so many things to do in this book because it is very thick. Every town has, stuff that you can do, lore that circulates. It even evolves when you get to chapter 2. You're like, okay, well that happened, and now you can go back to that same town, and now this. So I think we probably ran through 6 or 7 of those towns, and they each had their own flavor, and depending on what our characters did, the consequences of those actions, the town felt. one town it went horribly wrong, and one town it went great. And if they purposely ignored like a town that was important to our story, it had pretty crazy ramifications later on, like much later on. I'm like, yeah, remember that one guy that you met in this prison that you didn't help and escape? Well, now he's this person because of that.
Yeah, and does the Arcane Brotherhood get introduced early on, or isn't there some helpful NPCs who can guide them a bit?
Yes, there's lots of NPCs. We started with an NPC that is sort of based off of that Arcane Brotherhood. I took one of those characters, and instead of playing that character, I actually got rid of that character. Before we even started, I was like, "Yeah, you lost one of your people, and this person came to get you because of that." And it was a wizard. And like, well, now you have no wizard, and you're stuck in Icewind Dale. They had just come from the south, and the pass had closed. And so I introduced it as in, yeah, even the Arcane Brotherhood is like, that was here to help you. They couldn't hack it. And that allowed me to sort of insert my own NPC in there to guide them through the story. So I played with them as a character, but my character didn't do that much in battle. Sometimes they yell at me if they were losing. They're like, "Hey, what about this guy?" I'm like, "Well, he's really just kind of like your helper. He's not."
You get out of jail free card.
Yeah. So there was always somebody there to kind of whisper in their ears a little bit when they didn't know what to do.
So they're chasing down that guy out. They're chasing down a guy who's undead, and that's why he's sort of non-stop. And then they go to a fortress, and the dragon's going to attack. And what can you remember what happened with your dragon attack route and all that? How did you do that?
Yeah, so there's this book introduces I can say spoilers here at this point. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so this book introduces the Duergar, which are these gray dwarves, and so they're building this mechanical dragon, and that's actually where we brought in the Asmodeus or Asmodeus character. As sort of the person whispering in the ear of these gray dwarves, and he was making that happen through just illusion and trickery. And so when our players eventually met the dragon, I really do like the mechanics here in this book for how if you don't defeat the dragon before it's finished being built, it escapes. And in our game, it did escape, and so it flies a certain pattern through the towns, and if they don't meet a certain goal by a certain time, this is what happens to that town. The dragon inflicts this much damage, or you can even roll for it if you wanted to, right? And so by the time they got to the dragon, it had already destroyed a couple of towns that we just wiped them out. But it set the stage for a fun little siege battle that we had there in one of the towns that started off fairly big, and in our game, we sort of had one town fall apart, and all of its residents sort of immigrated into that town, making it much bigger. And that was the town that was under siege at this dragon attack. So I think they failed to stop it there, and they met it at another town, and it was the first time that I lost a player or a player's character. Oh, yeah. And it was really. Man, I gave my players higher levels than they needed because we were changing the story so much.
Yeah.
And one of my players essentially just made a weird, wild decision, and I'm like, I can't. Like, if you want to do that, okay, but this is what's going to happen. So we lost our character, and so that was a really heavy point in our game because that character was like the heart of the party.
All right.
So they lost the heart of the party, and we couldn't bring this character back to life, with Revivify or anything like that. But the character had a sentient sword on them that we gave them earlier in the game, and so we merged that character's soul with the sentient sword, and they found a suit of armor and kind of they made it function that way. So that's kind of cool.
That is cool, yeah.
All from the dragon fight, Yeah,
I mean, the dragon fight's pretty cool anyway. Pretty video game.
Yeah.
So then, after dealing with the dragon eventually, what's next? Do they do traveling to the last Icewind, right?
So you have this dragon threat, but the larger threat is this demigod that has come to the realm, to the Dale, and is why everything won't thaw. Because Icewind Dale is still supposed to have seasons,
Yeah.
but it doesn't at this point because this demigod is there, and that is the bigger threat. So you have this dragon threat, and then you have this sort of goddess threat. So that was the next part of the story. Is like, okay, now they need to stop this rhyme because it's not thawing. Things are getting worse. More monsters are coming. The sun doesn't ever rise.
Yeah.
At this point in the game, it just stays below all the time. So it's kind of like eternal darkness. So yeah, then they have to go deal with that. And along the way, I think that's the you kind of can go back to chapter 2 to play through these different parts of the Dale where things have happened because of this rhyme, depending on what your characters decide to do. And after that is when you get into the necropolis part of the story, which is where that's where they kind of lost me.
Right.
And I was like, I feel like there's 2 stories here. And I think there is, really. When I read it, I'm like, I feel like because the necropolis is like a futuristic city from the sky. I'm like, where does that, what?
Yeah. Is that just a dungeon crawl for the sake of?
Yeah, I thought we would get through it really fast. It should be its own book,
Right. Really?
like a smaller book.
Yeah.
So we changed it quite a bit from what it's supposed to be. But I still used a lot of what they set up here. I was like, okay, it's fantasy. Let's roll with it. And it's a change of pace from all this snow anyway. I think they were ready for that at that point. Okay, enough frozen stuff.
Yeah. And then there's the bit about trials, isn't there? Trials of Veer. Did you do that? Or did you...
There are some trials of perseverance that they had to go through. Man, it's we played so many games to get through this, and it's there in my head. But there was I call them episodes because we podcast our games.
Right.
So there was this episode where they had to sit through these trials with there's tribes throughout the Dale. And so they had to go through these trials with each of these tribes. So each tribe, and one of our characters was part of one of those tribes. They had to go to and sort of help out or not, depending on what they did, and they had various ramifications for how they decided to help or not. And, it was just another sort of fun thing to do that was a little different. Anytime you're giving them morality choices, that's always fun to watch play out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And then eventually they kind of confront this demigod or whatever. How did that play out? Or was that already swapped out for Asmodeus?
No, we kept this goddess. Yeah, Auril is this demigod owl looking creature.
Yeah.
She has 3 or 4 forms.
That's cool.
I had introduced her much earlier in the game. That's not part of the book. As I kind of made her whisper in the ear of one of my players who totally took the bait. And it became kind of like this love interest, And so he was like, because this creature, this goddess, isn't necessarily evil. She's just chaos.
Yeah.
It's just that's what she is. So we played on that a little bit. We marked my character with her, like she touched him on the arm and it burned a mark on his arm. And from that point on, that character was so torn between what to do, because he was like, well, I'm kind of like aligned with this, and I get what she's saying, but also, yeah, she's destroying people's lives in the process. And we ended up eventually having that guy's his arm was destroyed because of a choice he made, and then we brought it back, and then we destroyed it again. It kind of became almost a running gag.
Yeah, that's good. So did they final boss fight?
They did have a pretty epic boss fight. So Auril, even though she's like an owl type creature, she had this rock, this big rock that she would fly upon that would help her cast a spell that kept the realm or the Dale in the rhyme. So she flies around nightly casting this. So they fought with the big bad. They did really well. And then they fought the Rock. It in the process, I went ahead and got rid of the NPC that I was playing along with them, because at that point we brought in another player, and I was like, well, now we started with 3 and then me, and I was playing the 4th, so now we had 4 players and me. So I got rid of that NPC I was playing in that boss fight, and wanted to see what they would do, afterwards, that they lost this character, because they didn't really trust him,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. I was like, I made him a tiefling, so I'm like, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, don't read into that.
He's still a nice guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, they did defeat the goddess, and but when they do, the island where they're fighting it starts to crumble into the sea. So they had to figure out an escape plan, and they did. And then we went on towards the last chapter of the book, which was a lot of fun.
What are the sort of major changes that were wins?
Bringing in Levistus as a big part of this game was really, I think, a good call. So we brought in this archdevil as someone who's there to help the party. And they did not trust him, because I know who he is, and they shouldn't have trusted him. But he was always in their ear, because one of them was cursed, and he was a lot of fun to play. I got to voice him like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. Because we do the podcast, we do a lot of voices. So that was a lot of fun. But that just their back and forth between that NPC and some of the other NPCs that are in the book, actually. Ronaldo is a halfling they meet. He became part of the party for a short period, even though he's only got like a page in the book, and just because they liked him, so that was another change I liked a lot. And then I think there's mention of a Tarask, I think, in the very end of the book, and I didn't bother with that.
There's a scroll of Tarask summoning, it just says if you use that, well, everything.
Yeah, and there was some time travel involved in the back and the end of the book too, that we just didn't go for it. I was like, let's keep it here and now. I don't want to turn this into science fiction too much.
Yeah. So what about your fails? What are your first modules?
Oh boy. Yeah. Definitely a little railroady at the beginning, just because it was my first game. And some of our players are great storytellers, and some of them are great storytellers who want to win. I'm like, well, there's really nothing to win here. And I think looking back, and because we do record this, I have the ability to go back and listen to it. So, which is good and often very uncomfortable, right? Because you're like, oh man, that was a mistake, or I was being a little too harsh, or I was being a little too nice. I probably should have a little less prep, right? Because I over-prepped, and I know you talk about that in some of your videos, trying to keep it simple, but having some prep. For the games I had too much, I would stick too hard to it. But some of my players, I probably should have catered to how they want to play. So give them a little something, give this a little something. Going back to your earlier question, one of the big wins, I think, that was a change, and it was just a change of pace. We stopped at one of the towns, and I was like, okay, they've been going through all this snow and darkness. Let's do a fight tournament. And so we brought in NPC for each player. That it was it was just a one-on-one fight tournament, and we just battled each other, whatever their stats were, nothing too special. I let them heal between bouts, and man, we had a blast, because of course they defeated all my NPCs, and then they had to fight each other. And that was so fun to watch, because they're on a team, and and then through that, I got to go ahead and place the next leg of our journey. At the very end of that, there's a twist, and things get revealed, and they're like, what? And then they have to make some pretty hard choices right after that. And man, that was I think just something necessary for our game to get our players to bond a little bit closer in game, because they're all very close outside of game. They're all good friends.
Yeah, that sounds like it went well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Tips for somebody who's coming to run their first module. What's your
for if you're gonna run your first module, relax. Don't forget to breathe. I write down in front of and I post a note on my DM screen almost every time we play. Don't forget to have fun. Right? That's probably the biggest thing. Don't forget to have fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tell me about the podcast, or tell our viewers where to find it.
Yeah, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcast. They are putting some of our first episodes up on YouTube right now. So the podcast is called Forgotten Tales of the Forgotten Realms. It's still super long. And then mine was called Forgotten Tales of the Forgotten Realms, Rime of the Frost Maiden. But you can find them on YouTube, starting from the first episodes we recorded under Forgotten Tales podcast. It's a little simpler.
Yeah.
So they are those are our early ones. You can actually hear us get better at podcasting. They're all musicians, so when we started to play, they're like, let's just record it. And now they've got a little bit better equipment. We're having a little more fun. We got a Patreon. You can find us on Patreon under the same name. And we're still playing. We're meeting Friday to continue. We're doing 2 new campaigns. We're kind of in between right now, but we're putting filler out there. We just did a Halloween special that I ran, which was a lot of fun. I like to DM, and I'm not going to be DMing the next 2 campaigns, so I'm a little sad. I really enjoy torturing my friends with Dungeons and Dragons.
The first 3 campaigns that I ran, I listened to a podcast of first. Absolutely invaluable. It's easier than you still have to read the module, but hearing it play out, you literally picture it in your head, or at least I did. I found that so helpful. If anyone's going to run Icewind Dale into your podcast,
I'm one of a few. There's a few podcasts of it. I've listened to a couple of them, and they're all inspiring. They all have different tones. Yeah. We are fun first. It is rated E. If it's explicit, we got some language in there. Yeah. Not for kids.
Oh well, don't know where to find you. Ryan, thank you so much for giving your time.
Chris, thank you. And thanks for having me on. It was great talking with you.
Good talking to you.